The fraud prevention officer on the phone was speaking, but the words sounded like they were coming from underwater. Sir, the account you're attempting to transfer funds has been flagged in multiple international fraud cases. He began listing the withdrawals, a cold, clinical recital of a life's work being dismantled, hundreds of thousands of dollars gone. As the financial reality was crashing down, the doorbell rang with an urgent chime. It was his daughter, Emily. She wasn't smiling. Her face was pale, her hands clutching a stack of papers like a shield. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "We need to talk. Now." She spread the documents across the kitchen table. It was all there. Her real name wasn't Sarah. It was Catherine. Emily, in a desperate attempt to save her father, had hired a private investigator. There was no record of Catherine ever being a nurse. She'd never lived in Ohio. The photos on her dating profile were stolen from a lifestyle blogger's social media account. But it got so much worse. Emily had discovered online forums, digital communities of the walking wounded, all victims of romance scams. She found 3 other men, all widowers, who had been ensnared by a woman using Catherine's exact playbook. The same stories, the same feigned affection, the same financial ruin. Then there was a 4th. His family had posted a memorial. The story detailed how he had been subjected to a tragic incident, a final act of despair after a predator had bled his entire life savings dry. As Emily laid out this gallery of horrors, Catherine herself walked into the room, a bright, oblivious smile on her face. She took one look at the papers on the table, at the blood draining from the man's face, and her entire mask dissolved. The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by something cold and hard as granite. There was no denial, no frantic apology. "You were a fool," she said, her voice dripping with contempt that curdled the air. "You were so desperate for a pretty story, you couldn't see the truth sitting right in front of you." She calmly picked up her purse, walked to the front door, and left. The angel was gone. In her place stood a monster who hadn't just stolen money, but had feasted on grief and turned a father against his own child. The silence that rushed back into the house was no longer one of loneliness, but a suffocating, soul-crushing shame. My name is James Smith. After witnessing how professional predators destroy innocent lives across America, I decided to fight back. This channel is a collection of thousands of real cases, hidden tactics, and voices of victims who were silenced. I'm here to be your shield in the digital world, because the best way to stop a scammer is to know their next move before they make it. Love is blind. Behind every sweet message is a bitter truth. Let's dive into the dark side of modern romance. Today's story is about a man we'll call Robert. And for Robert, the world ended the day he lost his wife, Eleanor. They had been a unit for 40 years, a lifetime of shared laughter, arguments, and the quiet comfort of knowing someone is always there. When she passed, the silence she left behind wasn't just an absence of sound. It was a physical weight. It felt like every room held a ghost, and the loneliness was a cancer of its own. His daughter, Emily, tried her best. She'd call, visit, bring the grandchildren over, creating brief islands of noise and life. But at the end of the day, Robert was alone with his grief. This is the state where predators thrive. They don't just look for lonely people. They look for good people whose hearts have been cracked wide open by loss. About a year after Eleanor's passing, a friend suggested Robert try a dating site for people over 50. He was hesitant. It felt like a betrayal. But the emptiness was a relentless tide. And that's where Catherine, posing as Sarah, found him. Her profile was a masterpiece of bait. The photos showed a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, projecting warmth and safety. Her bio claimed she was a retired nurse who had lost her own husband a few years back. The message was clear. I understand your pain. I am safe. From the very first message, the connection felt electric. She didn't just offer sympathy. She mirrored his pain and reflected back a vision of hope. This is a tactic, a form of psychological grooming. They become a perfect mirror for your needs. The conversations quickly moved from the dating site to hours-long phone calls. She flooded his life with a fire hose of intense affection, compliments, and promises of a future. For a man drowning in the gray, monotonous reality of grief, her words were an intoxicating escape. He was feeling a flicker of warmth for the first time in a year. He told Emily about her, and while she was cautious, she was simply relieved to hear happiness in her father's voice again. Robert honestly believed the universe had sent him an angel to pull him out of the darkness. The first time Sarah asked for money, it was so perfectly staged that it didn't even register as a request. It was an opportunity for Robert to be a hero. About 2 months in, she called him, her voice thick with panic. Her sister was in a car accident and needed emergency surgery. A classic insurance issue was holding up the procedure. It was only $2,000. For Robert, it wasn't a question. You help the people you care about. He sent the money without a second thought. The hook was set. But soon, tiny cracks began to appear in the flawless facade. Small, almost unnoticeable inconsistencies in her stories. She claimed to have grown up in Ohio, but then a story about a childhood pet would be set in Arizona. When Robert gently questioned it, she'd laugh it off. "Oh, my family moved around so much. Sometimes I forget where I was." The excuses were as smooth as polished stone. A pattern emerged. She would never video chat. The camera on her phone was perpetually broken. The signal in her area was always mysteriously bad. The excuses to avoid meeting in person began to pile up, each one a perfectly crafted melodrama designed to pull at his heartstrings, and by extension, his wallet. First, it was her sister's long, complicated recovery. Then, a sudden and frightening issue with her own health. The red flags were waving, but Robert was willingly colorblind. He was too invested in the beautiful fantasy she was selling him. When your reality is painful, a beautiful lie can feel more true than the truth. Then came the masterstroke, the move designed to escalate the relationship and isolate Robert from his last line of defense, his own daughter. Sarah told him, her voice choked with emotion, that the distance was becoming unbearable. She wanted to move to his city, to be with him, to finally start their life together. When Emily heard this, her internal alarm bells went from a quiet hum to a full-blown siren. She started asking the logical, practical questions. "Dad, where is she going to live? You have never met this woman in person. You haven't even seen her on a video call. Doesn't this seem incredibly fast?" And Catherine, the master manipulator, had a counter for that. She didn't argue with Emily directly. She whispered poison into Robert's ear. In a hushed, wounded tone, she suggested that his own daughter didn't trust him to make decisions. She planted a venomous seed. That Emily was just worried about her inheritance, that she saw their love as a threat to her financial future. It's a brilliant diabolical tactic. Frame the person who loves you most as a greedy adversary. And because Robert was so deep in the fantasy, so desperate for the future she promised, he believed her. He chose the illusion over reality. So, Sarah moved in. The first few weeks were a honeymoon phase, a carefully constructed dream. She filled the quiet house with life again, cooking his favorite meals, organizing closets, making him feel cared for in a way he hadn't since Eleanor was alive. But this domestic bliss was just the setup for the final act, the financial takedown. It started with small suggestions. She glanced over his shoulder as he paid bills online. She told him his financial advisor, a man he'd worked with for over 20 years, was ripping him off. His investments were garbage. She had a background in finance. She claimed a career before her time as a nurse. She spun an incredible tale about a guaranteed high-return investment opportunity with a private European firm. It was exclusive and inside track. All he had to do was liquidate some of his existing assets. To make the process easier and more transparent, she suggested they open a joint bank account. It would be a symbol of their trust. She cooed, a foundation for their future together. He handed over control. Bit by bit, the financial demolition began. First, it was $30,000 for that can't-miss investment. Then, she convinced him to sell a rental property he owned, promising to roll the profits into an even better venture. It was a relentless cascade of emergencies and opportunities. A surprise tax bill from her late husband's estate. A customs fee to release a valuable inheritance she had coming from overseas. Each request was more urgent and more expensive than the last. Robert's fortune, the $2.1 million he had built over a lifetime of disciplined work, the nest egg meant to secure his retirement and provide for his family, was being systematically drained by a professional predator. Emily saw it happening. She would come to the house, and the air would grow thick with tension the moment she saw Sarah. She pleaded with her father, "Dad, this isn't right. I've looked online. This investment firm doesn't exist. Please, just talk to a lawyer. For me." But Robert, his judgment clouded by affection and poison, accused her of being jealous. He told her she was trying to sabotage his happiness. The conflict culminated in a screaming match in his own driveway. He told his only daughter not to come back until she could support him and Sarah. It was the last time they spoke for months. He had chosen the predator over his own child. In 2024 alone, reported losses to romance scams in the U.S. soared past $672 million. Globally, that number is in the billions. This isn't just a few bad actors. It's an industrial-scale operation run by sophisticated criminal networks that have perfected the art of emotional and financial destruction. With the truth finally revealed, Robert and Emily went to the police. The mountain of evidence Emily had gathered was undeniable. The paper trail from the bank detailing the illegal financial movements, the private investigators' report, and most powerfully, the testimony from other victims' families. It painted a picture of a calculated and ruthless criminal. A few weeks later, Catherine was arrested at an airport, likely on her way to find her next Robert. Authorities believe she was a key operative in a much larger international network. Knowing she is behind bars brings a certain grim satisfaction. But it doesn't bring the money back. It doesn't erase the months of psychological manipulation. And it doesn't undo the deep wound Robert inflicted on his relationship with his daughter. Looking her in the eye and admitting she had been right about everything was the hardest, most humbling moment of his life. Rebuilding that trust is now his daily work. I'm sharing Robert's story because these predators count on one thing more than anything else: their victim silence. They thrive on the shame that prevents people from admitting they were fooled. If you are communicating with someone online, you must arm yourself with skepticism. Watch for the red flags. They shower you with intense affection almost immediately. They always have an excuse for why they can't meet or video chat, and they strategically try to isolate you from your friends and family. Most importantly, if they ask for money, for any reason whatsoever, that is the final, blaring alarm. Never send money or grant financial access to someone you have not met and verified in the real world. Listen to your loved ones. If the people who have known you your whole life are worried, you owe it to yourself to hear them out. I'm slowly helping Robert put the pieces of his life back together. The financial loss is devastating, but it's just money. What truly matters is family. He is working every day to repair the bond that he allowed a monster to break. She took his savings, but she will not take his future. The angel was a devil in disguise, but his real angel was there all along, his daughter, who fought for him even when he was pushing her away. And that is a fortune no one can ever steal. To learn more about the tactics these criminals use and how to protect yourself and your family, subscribe to the Romance Scam Podcast. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and stay safe.